Hi everyone, Pastor Craig here, and this is Devotions with the Pastor, where you're just invited along on my own personal devotional life, and I've been working through Luke for a while, and so today I'm in Luke chapter 15. In Luke 15 has three parables that are important, and in fact, beginning not this coming Sunday, which is Father's Day, but the day after, I'm going to start a whole new series about the parables of Jesus. I'm going to work through a bunch of them in Matthew. So I want to cover one, though, that I'm not going to do in that series, and that's the very first one in chapter 15, and it's called the Parable of the Lost Sheep. And I want to read it to you and then just comment a little bit on it. It says, "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus," okay? So they've all closed in on him. "But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered," okay? So they're just kind of muttering. "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So they're complaining that he's associating with the wrong people. Jesus is getting a bad reputation because he keeps hanging out with sinners, which I think is a really important thing. I think it's especially important for me to hear because I grew up in what we would call theologically a pietistic kind of background, which means we cared a lot about personal purity, and that was a really big deal for us. And Jesus was pretty clear that personal purity wasn't about the stuff on the outside, it was about the stuff on the inside. And so he's always hanging out with the wrong people, and that was very hard for the pietistic kind of Pharisees and Sadducees, okay? Then Jesus said to them this parable: "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." So there's a couple of things that's important. In one of the other Gospels, Jesus talks about putting them in the pen, and so I've heard people say, well, it was okay because the rest of the sheep weren't safe. One of the things about Luke is he leaves them in an open field, and so they weren't safe. And so there's an implied message in Luke that, the going and getting the 99, he's willing to endanger some of the other sheep. And so that one always hits me when I read it in Luke. And then the other thing is just that he pursues so much that one lost person, that lost people really, really, really mattered to Jesus. And sometimes I think in the modern church, we struggle with that. It can be very much about us. And that's not the way Jesus came at it. Jesus gives us this wonderful parable about a shepherd that goes hunting for this and looks all over for them and then carries them back. And then the last thing I think is really interesting. It says, "I tell you, in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not need to repent." And so that tells us something about what we should be celebrating in the church, that we should celebrate when people become followers of Jesus, and that this is just a really important thing. I mean, this whole thing is all about how important lost people are to Jesus and sharing our faith and going out and finding the lost. And so I just read this as a challenge to me. It's so easy for me to get caught up in churchiness. I spend my life with church people. I administer church things, all of that. And so the Lord in the last couple of years has been reminding me of how important it is to do whatever it takes to reach lost people for Jesus. I have on my reading list a set of names that I pray for every day who are far from God, that he would bring them back. I hope you're doing the same, and I'm looking for opportunities to reach and connect and love these people. So let's be out looking for lost sheep, and then let's get ready to holy party when he brings them home to be with him. So love you guys, and I'll see you on Sunday.